Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another episode of the PC Boiz Podcast. I am your host, Logan Locke. Before we get started with today's video, of course, I will have all the links in the link tree in the description down below to our Twitter and, of course, the Discord. So if you do want to stay up to date with whatever's going on or whatever I'm talking about, any kind of news or updates in regards to movies or video games, do join one of those two, as those are the two platforms I am mostly active on. But without further ado, let me get into the Thunderbolts review. So, for those of you who, of course, has kept up with my channel in the past few months, I've been doing all the Daredevil episode reviews. I didn't do the finale, simply because, well, nobody seemed to really care about Daredevil, unfortunately. While I thought the series was okay, it was not something that a lot of people were showing up to listen to, and the Nielsen charts also basically showed that as well. However, with the Thunderbolts, this is a very interesting and sad situation of a really good movie not making much money, okay? And simply put, the Thunderbolts is a movie that is very well written. The action is really good. There's no stupid CGI mess in this film. It is actually the most clean looking film Marvel Studios has done in a long time. And that speaks a lot because, well, most of their movies have not been very good over the course of the past 5 years outside of a few. So, in this review, I'm going to be doing full spoilers, by the way. Just, kind of gonna let you guys know that. I'm not gonna do like a rundown of the story like I normally do. I'm just gonna kind of talk about the characters, their development, some of the major things that happen, and ultimately that's that. So most of this movie basically revolves around this ragtag group of essentially mercenaries forming a, I guess you could say, reluctant reliance, I guess, to work together to take out Valentina. And I'm just gonna say Valentina because it's much better than her long-ass name. But, so, that's kind of like the whole goal of this main movie. And so we start off with Yelena, basically saying she's unsatisfied with her life. She doesn't really like what she's doing. But then she ends up getting sent on a mission to this bunker, as well as Ghost, Taskmaster, U.S. Agent, being the final one that's sent there. And their whole goals are to kill one another, essentially. Like, they're all given different targets. So, Yelena's there to kill Ghost and whatnot and keep an eye on her. And then, U.S. Agent's there to kill Black Widow. And then Taskmaster's there to also kill U.S. Agent. So, everybody's there trying to kill somebody, and they all end up realizing, oh, wait, we're being played right now, when they're all basically, you know, figuring out everything that's going on. Now, Taskmaster, I just want to get this out of the way with, because it is literally the smallest thing in the movie. Taskmaster dies. Basically, Taskmaster shows up, gets the shit kicked out of her. She gets a few good licks in against Ghost, but she's just shot in the head, very unceremoniously, and then, U.S. Agent, John Walker, and, Ghost just, you know, steal her weapons and gear after she's dead. Yeah, Taskmaster was done so dirty in this movie, it's not even funny. Now, don't get me wrong, I do not like MCU Taskmaster at all. Anybody that listened to my Black Widow, review on Spotify from years back now, can tell you I really hated what they did with Taskmaster. Taskmaster's my favorite villain in Marvel Comics, okay? And I would even say in comics history, because he's literally as simple as he copies your fight style, so you're basically fighting yourself, and he just talks shit the whole time. And I love that. But ultimately, though, you know, while I don't like Taskmaster in the MCU, the way that they use Taskmaster in this movie is like, why did you even put her in here? Like, if you're gonna kill Taskmaster off, do something creative with it, you know, make us feel something for the character, instead of just bring him in, shoot him in the head, and be done with it. I guess in the original version of the script of this film, she was supposed to be like the main character of the movie, or second main character, and there was going to be a lot of depth to her character, which is great, and there was supposed to be, I guess, like a running joke of her trying to kill U.S. Agent throughout the film. But yeah, Taskmaster is done dirty in this movie. she's not in it at all. Anything in the marketing, like, we were all watching the marketing, and she went from being there to not being there, and basically being absent from about every trailer outside of the few points that they CGI'd her in. But yeah, it was really unfortunate what they did to Taskmaster in this film. Like I said, not a fan of the character, didn't like the character, but I feel like you could have done a better way of getting rid of the character outside of bang to the head, like, literally a few seconds of her being in there. To me, that just feels lazy and, you know, unceremonious. Like I said. Outside of that, though, the rest of the characters in this movie, the best way I can describe it is John Walker is just there to be the dick the whole movie. Yelena's kind of like the heart and soul of this movie. You know, the Red Guardian, he also was like a very good standout in terms of the comedic tone and stuff like that. And Bob, aka Sentry, he also is one of the, you know, major, heartfelt characters of this movie. I would say outside of Taskmaster, that's not a standout in any way, shape, or form. The other characters that did not stand out to me would be Ghost. They didn't really do much with her in this film. She was just kind of there. She had a cool looking suit, but she was just kind of there. And then even Bucky was just kind of there. Like, they didn't really do much with Bucky. So there's some characters in this movie where I'm just like, why are they here? What is going on? You know? And unfortunately, this is one of those situations where I'm literally just watching this film and I'm like, I wish they did something more with these characters. Now, the worst thing I can say about this movie is some of the characters are just kind of there and they're just meh. And that's not even that bad. You know, the CGI, like I said, is very on point. It's actually surprising now to see a Marvel project with good CGI, or even average CGI. That's very sad to say, because they used to be the pinnacle, but yeah, that's kind of where we're at, unfortunately. So that's kind of the first thing. Second thing, I would say that's also another big standout is the writing. The writing of the characters is so well done in here, and the way that they deal with Sentry is perfect. So Sentry is basically, for those of you that do not know Marvel comic lore, is basically Marvel Superman. You know, invulnerable, can fly. He has a dark side called the Void. So yeah, that's your basic crash course without getting into, like, a lot of the crazy Marvel stuff and, you know, power scaling of him fighting the Hulk and all that other stuff. We're not gonna go there. But ultimately, when it comes to Sentry, they make him powerful. They make him a threat in that sense. Even though he's not the bad guy. But when the Void shows up and starts making people turn into shadows and shit, you know, it's very well done. They don't beat Sentry by brute forcing it. And I'm glad that Marvel Studios did not try to write characters that just somehow find a way to beat a super powerful villain. No, they literally go in and psychologically try to help his character. And for me, I think that that is super important. And I think that that's awesome. Because it goes to show, number one, they understand how to deal with villains like this or characters like this that are so powered in terms of beating them. But not only does it show that they know how to deal with that, but the way it was executed was very well done. This movie actually had emotion in it, where I was, like, kind of tearing up in some scenes, which I don't very often do when it comes to films. But this movie had me feeling stuff for the characters, and that's a great thing. Even characters that you're not supposed to like, you actually feel something for. Like, everybody in this movie has a dark past. Bucky, we don't really need to see because we know that from all the Captain America movies. Yelena, we go a little bit more in depth with her. Ghost, you know, that's another thing that's crazy. At the very end of the movie, you have the Void, right? And he's, like, sending Yelena into, like, her darkest past. We get to see some of Bob's past as well. But we don't see anything with Ghost. And I think that that was a very big missed opportunity in terms of exploring her character and why she's messed up. I mean, we know that she went through experiments and stuff, but there's a difference between seeing the little bit that we did in Ant-Man and the Wasp and then fully going into it, which they they could have done very easily in this film, but they did not, unfortunately. And at the end of the day, I think that this film it's not like Avengers, Infinity War levels of good. It's not, Winter Soldier levels good. This movie, in my opinion, is up there in the better category. I think it surpasses a lot of, obviously, the newer stuff. But I think even some of the older Marvel Studios projects, I would prefer this movie over. So, for instance, if I can throw out some examples, most of the Iron Mans, I would rather watch Thunderbolts over. Iron Man 2, in particular, I would watch Thunderbolts over Iron Man 2 any day of the week. I think Thunderbolts isn't in the great category. It's not in the great tier of Marvel movies, but I think it's in the higher good level of Marvel movies. I would watch, if I had to debate on what I would choose to watch this over, Spider-Man Homecoming and this, I think would be very close. And for those of you that don't know, I hold Spider-Man Homecoming in very high regards in terms of the MCU movies. I think it's by far the best Spider-Man movie in the MCU, and no, I'm not counting No Way Home because it's a cameo fest. It's a good movie, but it's relatively just a cameo fest. But at the end of the day, this movie is very well done. It is original. It's not retreading anything that we've done before, especially with Sentry and what he does. Killing a character like Taskmaster off the bat. Like, this movie does so many things that other Marvel movies don't. And that's one thing I have to hand to Marvel. Most Marvel films have no stakes. Now, granted, I didn't like this Taskmaster. Not many people did. But they killed her off. Just 'cause, And most people were not expecting that. Unfortunately for me, I had that spoiled via YouTube thumbnails. But, for those that were not expecting it, it's an unexpected thing that adds stakes to the film. And, like I said, Bucky, Ghost were kind of just there. Everybody else actually felt like, they had some emotional weight. Even John Walker, and seeing kind of like what happened with his family and stuff after the events of Falcon and Winter Soldier, I think even played an emotion with me. I'm like, damn, this guy cared more about his, Captain America status and stuff like that than his own family and stuff. So you do get that background. And looking into Bob as a character and whatnot, and even, Valentina, looking into her background, like, everybody that needed to get looked at, outside of Ghost, in my opinion, did get looked at psychologically. And it's just unfortunate that we didn't get some extra involvement with the other few characters that I would have liked to have seen dived into more. Sentry looked great, obviously his suit has that whole MCU over-design thing going on, but I don't think it looks terrible. Matter of fact, I think it works here. Unlike Spider-Man's suit, which I think needs to be very basic, this one was okay with the redesign stuff that they do. I was fine with it. Taskmaster even had a great suit in this movie. Like, granted, she wasn't in the movie much, but she has a great looking costume. But yeah, so when it comes to this movie, guys, overall, I'll give it probably an 8 out of 10. A solid 8 out of 10. I could even bump it up to an 8.5, to be honest with you. I really enjoyed this film. It's very much worth watching. And I know Marvel hasn't done a lot of good movies, but even people that don't like Marvel stuff, I've seen on YouTube, say, yeah, this is a good film. And that says a lot, when you're taking people that don't exactly like Marvel movies, and they're like, yeah, this is good. And like I said, the reason Thunderbolts is a good movie is simply because it has good writing. The character stories and the developments and their arcs all matter. And that's what really drives this movie, I think, most importantly, right? Sure, the action sequences look great when they happen. The CGI is phenomenal when they need to have CGI. Like, there's not points in the movie where I'm like, man, this doesn't look real and stuff like that, But the thing that ultimately matters about this film is the emotional weight that the characters in the story is bringing. And they do it so phenomenally. I was actually very impressed with this movie. And it's very funny that the Thunderbolts of all films could actually be the one that says, yeah, the MCU still is capable of writing good stories. the only reason, like, that I wouldn't put this in the top tier echelon of higher Marvel films is simply, number one, this movie does not flesh out every character possible. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that this movie is just a build-up movie, right? I wouldn't say that this movie could just stand on its own, per se. And that mainly just has to do with Sentry being there. If Sentry wasn't in this movie, you could say that this movie could stand on its own. But because Sentry's there, which I'm assuming is going to have a big, role in terms of the upcoming Avengers stuff, I don't think it can stand on its own, per se, in that regard. But outside of the Sentry stuff, it can. But then the question remains, would I watch it over Captain America Civil War? Would I watch it over Captain America The Winter Soldier? Infinity War? Endgame? What are some of the other higher Marvel movies that I have ranked up there? Iron Man, the original Iron Man, of course. Can't really beat that one. That one's pretty solid. OG Captain America, I know some people don't like it. I really do. I think it's pretty phenomenal. Age of Ultron, another one that I really like. This movie is a good film, but I wouldn't watch it over those other ones I just listed. But it's definitely up there, for sure. I haven't done a review and stuff in a while, and I'm not exactly, I haven't rewatched all the MCU movies, so it's kind of hard for me to really gauge exactly where I would put this one, but it's up there. It's definitely up there. But like I said, it all has to do with the emotional storytelling and how they wrote the characters. And I've said this many times, Yelena is technically, the main character of this film, and she's written very well. She is a very compelling character, and that's what I like. And another thing that I like, too, is they allow the guys to be guys, you have the scenes of, Yelena and Ghost being badass, but you also have, John Walker gets his moments of being badass, Bucky gets his moments of being badass, Sentry gets his moments of being badass. So everybody equally gets, a time to be a badass. I say outside of Red Guardian, because Red Guardian is kind of a joke. That's kind of the whole point. At least of the MCU version, not the comic version. But, everybody's used very well. And they do everybody well. And this movie could have easily fallen into the pitfall of we're going to make fun of all the male characters and just degrade them the whole time. And I get they were making fun of John Walker, but there's a reason why. It's because his whole thing was being a complete dick. So when they're making fun of him, it's not because he doesn't know how to fight or anything like that. It's just because he's a dick. Which makes sense, right? So they handled even that aspect very well, too. But, so let's come to the conclusion, right, of the film. So the film basically ends with, essentially, the new Avengers being created. Val essentially uses the whole Sentry/Void incident to frame it as her introducing the Avengers. This was all planned. I wanted to show you guys the new Avengers. And the post-credit scene is basically the new Avengers and their new Avengers Tower with the worst logo I have ever seen. It's very, very bad. They're talking about, Captain America trying to sue them for the name Avengers. Red Guardian's we're gonna call ourselves Avengers with a Z, and he's got this merch and stuff, and they're talking about how there's a polling online basically saying they're not the real Avengers, and that Sam Wilson's Avengers are the real Avengers, basically talking about what I would equate to internet drama shit that we see in the real world today, on Twitter and stuff. And it ends with them looking at an anomaly spaceship, or an interdimensional spaceship or something in space, and we find out it's the Fantastic Four rocket ship, which Fantastic Four will explain how they got to this universe. So there's that. So like I said, set up for the next film. And ultimately, Fantastic Four, if I'm correct, is supposed to be the last MCU movie we get before Doomsday. What I think is wild is that Doomsday comes out next year, and I'm not even, really hyped. And that's an issue, right? We all know back in the day when we were approaching Black Panther, and we knew Avengers Infinity War and Endgame were around the corner. We were all excited. We were all hyped. Movies and so much time before we even got the trailer. With Doomsday, I don't feel that hype. And it's unfortunate because I remember back in the day I used to be excited for everything Marvel put out. Even back in the day of Black Widow, dude. Black Widow I was actually excited about. I know, crazy. Logan was excited about Black Widow. But I can't say the same. I'm not as excited when it comes to this next upcoming film. I'm just not. And ultimately it's because there has been no vision. They literally just said, okay, we're going to Doctor Doom. And I get that they had to pivot because the Kang stuff wasn't working either because they made Kang into a joke. So, in my opinion, the Multiverse Saga is going to be fan service. Well, the movie. That's going to be the next two Avengers films. If I had to guess, it's not going to land as good as the old Avengers films. I think it'll do very well box office wise, but I think when people look back on it on a critical standpoint or on a movie enjoyment standpoint, it's not going to be on the levels of Infinity War or Endgame. And it simply comes down to the build up to that event didn't feel like a build up. And while I think the Thunderbolts is a great step in the right direction for Marvel, the Fantastic Four has to follow up with a banger as well. And it's really the last shot Marvel has before Doomsday for them to do that. Because Spider-Man doesn't come out till after Doomsday. So, yeah. And we don't even know if Spider-Man's going to be in Avengers Doomsday. Because Tom Holland, of course, is doing The Odyssey for Christopher Nolan. He's doing Spider-Man 4. So, we don't even know if Tom Holland will be, and if he is, how long he'll be in Doomsday. So, that's an issue. Do I think Fantastic Four first steps will be good? I hope so. I hope it is, but I'm not holding my breath. Okay? But yeah, guys, that is my review of Thunderbolts. I know normally when I do reviews, I kind of just go through the whole movie beat for beat. Maybe I'll have a rant or two, but I genuinely like this movie. I have no major critiques. Like I said, the only critiques I have is we could have gone more in depth into Ghost Story. We could have gone more in depth into, you know, John Walker even a little bit more. Taskmaster, they could have done a better death for Taskmaster. But yeah, outside of these few things, the movie was pretty good. It's not great. Like I said, I think that a lot of that has to do with the fact that the older movies just had far superior writing. This movie had very good writing. Very, very good writing, but not on the level of those ones. And that's simply what keeps it from being like a 9, you know? But yeah, guys, I recommend you guys go watch Thunderbolts. It's a very solid film. PC Boiz approved. Well, at least for me. I don't know about David and Kevin. But I'm assuming they'll probably like it too. But yeah, guys, I don't know when my next podcast will be. We're gonna be talking about Doom, though. Because Doom the Dark Ages comes out next week, and I get 2 days early access because I bought the collector's edition. So, I will be sure to review that game once I beat it. I'm not going to do any podcasts hyping it up because it's literally here already, you know, like I've missed out on my opportunity to do that. But I also do want to talk about on the podcast Fantastic Four, because that is the next Marvel movie, 28 years later, also coming up. And then, of course, Doom the Dark Ages for my review and whatnot of that game when that time comes. But, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for watching. I hope you all enjoyed. If you guys want more review, you know, podcasts, or maybe even, like, a ranking podcast. If you guys want me to pull up, like, a tier list and then have me go do a tier list, I'm very, you know, welcoming to do that. And I'm willing to even spread out the podcast to have different segments. So, like, obviously we have the main stories that we talk about, or if we're doing a review or something. But if you guys want me to do something, like, on the side, like do a reaction or something while I'm doing the podcast, feel free to send links in the Discord. Send them to me on X via message. And I can incorporate those into the podcast if you guys want me to. I have no issue with that whatsoever. But yeah, thank you very much for watching, and I'll catch you all in the next one.